Okay, back it up, that's it. Perfect. 1960, The Making of the President, is one of the heaviest two-player games I have. 1960, The Making of the President. This game puts you in the seat of either Nixon or Kennedy whilst you're campaigning to get the most electoral votes in the 1960s presidential election. It's a card-driven game that uses area control mechanics. Each of the 50 states is worth a different amount of electoral votes, ranging from anywhere between 3 and 45, so it makes for some very interesting decisions by players, as it's often not a matter of how many states you lead, but what states you lead. This also assists to a leader not really being clear until the final tally of votes at the end of the game, and it adds to the tension and so forth, which is fantastic. 1960, The Making of the President is a strategic two-player game. Approximate playtime of 90 to 120 minutes. It's a pretty deep game, so let's jump right in and have a brief overview of how the game is played.
Now, the first thing I notice when I open the box is the board is massive. So for the purpose of this overview, we will concentrate on the Mid-East region and East region only. So let's have a look here. We have the Mid-East region, East region, the players' support cubes, of which they've already placed some, the players' tokens, the advertising space for each region, and Kennedy's playing area. To begin, you must first determine initiative. Each player at the start of the game places 10 cubes of their colour in the provided bag. To determine initiative, you must draw cubes from the provided bag until 2 of the same colour cubes are drawn. That player, in this case blue, will get to choose who will act first this turn. So Blue, or Kennedy, chooses to begin himself and plays a card to begin the activity phase. He plays a new frontier from his hand of 6 cards. When playing a card, it can be played in one of 2 ways. It can be played for the event. In this case, the Kennedy player may discard any number of cards from his hand and draw the same number of replacements from the deck. Or the card can be played for the CP points, aka campaign points. Campaign points can be used in a number of ways, which I'll just touch base on here. Campaign points can be used to gain support in the region that their player piece is. So here the Kennedy player has 2 CP points to spend. He could place 2 support cubes in Rhode Island, for example, or 1 in New Jersey and 1 in Pennsylvania. Note that he moves the player's token to the location he is campaigning for support. He could of course select any state to campaign in within the East region, because that's where his player token is. If he were to decide to travel across the region's boundary to campaign in the Mid-East region, he would have to pay 1 campaign point to cross the border. Then Kennedy would have the option of placing the remaining 1 support cube in any state in the Mid-East region. But what about taking control off another player? Let's have a look. Now, only one player can have support cubes in a state at one time, so let's say Kennedy wanted to take the state of Delaware away from Nixon's control. In this example, Kennedy would announce that he is spending the 2 CP points in Delaware. The first of Kennedy's cubes would remove Nixon's one. Now Nixon has no support cubes there, and Kennedy is free to place his second cube in that state. Kennedy is now leading the state of Delaware and has taken control from Nixon. A player is said to be leading a state if he has at least 1 support cube in that state. A player is said to be carrying a state if he has at least 4 support cubes in that state. So let's say the Kennedy player wanted to try and cut down Nixon's support in West Virginia. Nixon has 4 cubes in West Virginia. Therefore Nixon is carrying the state. Because Nixon is carrying the state, it's not quite as simple as the example before of 1 cube negates another. Kennedy now has to do a support check. He announces how many CP points he will spend trying to cut down Nixon here. He says he will spend the full 2 campaign points. He now has to do a support check, similar to the initiative check. He takes a number of cubes from the bag equal to the amount of CP points he spent. So Kennedy takes 2 cubes from the bag. For each of his own support cubes drawn, he can remove 1 of Nixon's. So in this case, he only gets 1 of his own, and removes 1 of Nixon's cubes from West Virginia. So this doesn't look like he's done a great deal. But the bonus is that Nixon now has less than 4 cubes in West Virginia, and is no longer carrying the state. He is only leading it. So if Nixon doesn't add support in West Virginia in his next turn, Kennedy would not have to do support checks in that state, making it a lot easier for Kennedy to take control. Now, I originally saw the support check and initiative mechanic and thought, well, that's quite a bit of luck involved in a strategy game, but there is a bit of thought behind this mechanic. When a player plays a card, either for the event or the campaign points, he places a number of rest cubes noted here on the card in his coffee cup. These cubes will eventually be put into the bag, so playing a card that places a large number of rest cubes will increase your chances of success with support checks and initiative checks. A player can also use his campaign points to gain media support in a region. If a player does this, he will avoid having to do support checks in the region he's advertising in. Players can also use campaign points to increase their support on the issues track. Many cards events will benefit the leader of a particular issue, and the leader on an issue will get benefits from the momentum phase. Players will play 5 cards before proceeding to the momentum phase, which sees the leaders on issues gain momentum markers and endorsement tokens. Endorsement tokens will assist you on election day. Momentum markers are awesome. They can be used to trigger an event on the opposition's card if they have played it for the campaign points. Next is the campaign strategy phase. You start your turn with 6 cards usually, but you'll only play 5 of them. The 6th card is put aside for the 6th turn, where players will participate in a debate. The campaign strategy phase also sees the rest cubes that are put in the players' coffee cups from the cards now planted in the bag, increasing their chances on winning support checks and initiative checks.
Okay, so there is a lot more to this game, and that's just a very basic overview of gameplay. The rulebook is available for download if you'd like to have a closer look into the mechanics of the game. The rulebook is also both well written and has great examples, and it makes the game quite easy to learn, as the rulebook's layout makes it easy to reference to whilst playing the game, which is great because for me, there's nothing worse than sitting down to play a game and ending up just reading about it. Now, I said the game is easy to learn, but I will say that there is quite a lot to learn, so obviously there's a lot to remember. Now, it's probably worth mentioning also that I have the first edition of the game, so obviously pictured in this review is the components from my copy. From what I understand, the second edition, there has been a few cosmetic changes to the components. I think mainly the board has had a bit of a facelift, and the rulebook has had a bit of an update just to be a bit clearer in some spots. Now, how everything in the game, the debates, the issues track, the endorsement tokens and everything, and how that all links up to create a lot of strategic possibilities, this will probably only become evident after playing the game. For me, I've got to say, it actually took a few games before I saw how all that pieced together. Now, the debates turn has players placing the cards that they put aside in previous turns on a separate board. I won't get into the mechanics of it, but the debates are very quick to resolve, which for me, I've got to say it was good because I didn't like the debates at all in my first couple of games. I liked the mechanics behind it, but it was the rewards of winning debates that just didn't seem to be worthwhile enough to put a lot of thought into that part of the game. The most you can get from debates is 9 cubes that can be placed anywhere, and there's events on cards that can be more beneficial than that. So considering you're saving cards from the first turn for the debates section, I felt you were sort of building up to something, and then when it came around I just wasn't really impressed. But after more plays and trying different strategies, I soon realised that the value is not so much in the reward of the cubes, but the reward is more the timing that those cubes are placed. After the debates, a few higher valued states will usually be fiercely fought over between the players, and winning the debates can really give you the upper hand and help you retain control of those key states for the 2 turns remaining before the election day comes around. So I think it depends on your strategy. I didn't like the debates, and now I really do. We've had some very fun, tense, close games of this, with 537 votes available for players. I've seen 20 votes between my opponent and I, so basically it came down to 1 state between us. But I've also lost the game by over 150 votes. That was horrible, but I had a lot of fun, and this game led me to purchase this game, which I never thought I'd be interested in, because usually games with long play times I don't find myself entertained, but I'm pretty confident Twilight Struggle will be a good game. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon.